conducted right now with the suspect, and we're awaiting the results of the autopsy to get an official cause of death for the suspect. And so we'll carry this press conference. I'll show the officer involved, the body-worn camera video and the in-car camera video first, straight through. We've edited it. This is not the entirety. We've made the appropriate redactions and editing, but it gives, what you will see is first the officer observing a vehicle at a high rate of speed going past the officer. You'll see the officer follow the vehicle, activate overhead lights, attempt to stop the vehicle. You see the vehicle accelerate, short pursuit, and then you'll see the officer self-terminate that pursuit. And then we'll show the second video, which will show the officer once he saw the vehicle parked on the side of the road a short distance away, exit his vehicle, and you will see the confrontation and the exchange of gunfire between the officer and the suspect. And so we'll start right now. What you're seeing right now is the officer. He's parked in the parking spaces in front of Center Station, just off of Western Avenue. And we'll start the video now with the officer coming toward him. Okay, and so the next video you see will be the officer once he's driving around the neighborhood. He sees that same vehicle parked on the side of the road and approaches the vehicle. Yes. All right, and we cut the video there out of respect to the officer. It's just an agonizing and very hard to listen sequence of events when you're hearing this officer in just excruciating pain and verbalizing the pain and agony that the officer is going through. And right now, with the officer and with their families going through at this point, we stopped the video at that point. But now I'm going to go back and replay that first video and just give a little bit of narration as to what we're seeing. Okay, and stop right here, Megan. And so what we're seeing, again, the officer's parked, and he sees a vehicle. It's hard to see the speed, and in fact, I'm going to have Megan go back again and just play that part again all the way through, just to get a sense for how fast this vehicle is coming past the officer. So once the officer sees that, attempts to catch up to the vehicle to effect just a routine traffic stop. And at this point, once you stop here, Megan, and at this point, he sees the vehicle slowing and maybe even stopping ahead of him. And so the officer at this point, the intention is to approach the vehicle and conduct an investigation of a minor traffic violation. Okay, stop it there. And so right here, you see the overhead lights are activated. Once the officer activates the overhead lights, this is the response he got from the person that was driving.
be attempting to stop the vehicle. Allen and
Hey, stop it here, Megan. And what's important about this sequence here is the officer realizes that this suspect is fleeing the wrong direction on a one-way road. And he knows that it's dangerous. And he has the self-awareness enough to know that this should probably be self-terminated in order to ensure the safety of others who may be, even though it's early in the morning, but still there may be pedestrians or other people who are out. And so just the self-awareness to know that, okay, we can catch this person another day, to me was very, very impressive on the part of that officer.
Lancaster is taken off, not pursuit though.
All right, and so now we're going to play the second video once more. And again, stop here, Megan. So officer now, he sees the vehicle on the side of the road, and now he's exiting his vehicle to approach it. He doesn't, at this point, in all likelihood, doesn't even know whether the vehicle is occupied or not. And right here. And so you can see the door is open to the vehicle, and you can see a shadowy figure starting to emerge from the rear of that vehicle. And you can see, and we'll replay that again for you. And you can see before, and you can even see the shadow of the officer right here. Officer didn't even have enough time to even draw his weapon when he noticed the threat, the deadly threat that he was encountering at this moment. And then you can see, and if you could pause it, maybe right when the arm goes up in the shot, and it's kind of hard once we get. And and you can see him raising the firearm before the officer even gets a chance to even react to what he's seeing. And so, and I'll turn this over to the mayor in a second, but again, just an extraordinary display of courageousness and professionalism by this officer under some extremely stressful conditions. You know, this is again, it highlights some of the difficulties of policing. During a time when we're seeing some of these assaults and on our police officers around this area and across the country. And so with that, I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you, Chief, and I want to commend you and command staff and all of our officers for their response to this situation, for their professionalism, and for the work that they do day in and day out. There are no words when you see someone who has committed themselves to public service, ambushed by a person with a gun for what should have just been a traffic stop. It really helps to, I hope, in people's minds, understand the danger that our police officers put themselves in every day. You don't know, and it's unfortunate that incidents like this have become all too common. And sadly, in Syracuse, they were deadly. My heart goes out to the officers' families and to the people of Syracuse. Here, I know the chief and I are grateful that we were able to speak with this officer after this incident, speak with his family members, be there with him at the hospital as he awaited surgery. And we are hopeful for an outcome that will result in him being able to carry on, and we are so grateful that that was the outcome. It could have been very different, but again, this is an act of depraved gun violence, and it has hit our city, and it has hit the close-knit community of our police department, And I encourage all of you, as I did earlier this morning, if you see a police officer today, please thank them for their service. And please be mindful of the fact that this impacts every single person in this police department. It impacts the officers, it impacts the administrative staff, the people who work day in and day out with these officers. And so my prayers are with this officer, with his family. It's a long road ahead. Every act of gun violence harms, and that harm can continue for years and even decades to come. And so this department will be here for this officer, for his family, and for the other officers in this department. Thank you again for the incredible work of the Albany Police Department, and for ensuring that we had an outcome today where, we're going to be moving forward and not having the unfortunate funeral that will come in Syracuse, where officers of the Albany Police Department, I'm sure, will attend, because that is what we must do in order to acknowledge and recognize that this is a job that is life and death. So thank you.
All right, so available to take any questions that you may have. Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Earlier it was mentioned that the suspect was known to police. Could you just elaborate on that?
And so, not known to us in the sense that we have an idea that the suspect has a somewhat troubling history in past, and not necessarily in Albany. Wasn't a name that's common to us, but the person has had some challenges in other places.
Why did
Yes. No, go ahead, Dan.
yeah, I was going to say, why did he stop there? Does he live in that area, in that neighborhood?
Don't know. Yeah, don't know.
I assume you know his identity at this point because you've tried to contact the family,
Yes.
but you don't have a home address for him?
I don't know. I don't know Dan exactly where he lives. Don't know why he was stopping at that location. But what's clear is that, when the officer attempted to confront him and stop his vehicle, once he saw the lights, he clearly saw that the officer was approaching, and he made an intentional decision to flee from the officer. So why he stopped there, I don't know.
Do you have reason to believe before the shooting took place, there might have been more than one individual in his car?
We don't have any information that indicates that anybody else was involved besides him.
Do officers usually travel alone? Like, do they usually work with a partner?
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, and it's fairly common for in terms of staffing in police departments for officers to be assigned to single units. It gives you more coverage space with fewer officers. But we're also cognizant of the officer safety aspects of it as well. And so there are some times that our officers are double units. In this case, the officer was a single unit, which is not uncommon. Yes, Steve?
The weapon, do you have any information to provide on that? Was it stolen? Was it a ghost gun? Is there anything you have on the gun?
I don't have that information. I know that we had at least one gun that was confiscated at the scene, other than the one gun from the officer. But I don't know the status of that or any other guns that were there.
And the officer involved, I know you're not identifying him right now. Can you provide any more information on him? How long he's been on the force?
It's a fairly young officer. It's an officer that's been on the force for, we have any idea what his? I would say 2 to 3 years. He's a fairly young officer.
Did the officer have information, like on the license plates or any information of the suspect when he was chasing him?
No, and that's what makes this so troubling for anybody who's worked the streets, anybody who cares about officers who are on the streets, because this truly was what we call a prototypical routine traffic stop. You see a vehicle, it is clearly traveling above the speed limit. Just want to stop the vehicle, find out what's happening, issue a violation if that's what's necessary, but besides that, had no other information whatsoever besides a vehicle that's traveling, and it devolved into a deadly force situation. So extremely troubling.
Was that vehicle registered to the suspect?
I don't know who it was registered to. I don't have that information.
Did the officer shoot the suspect from the ground after he was shot, or was he still on his feet?
The officer fired his weapon during the encounter. I don't know exactly, I don't have the information right now on exactly where the officer was when he did so or what position the officer was in. But the suspect clearly fired at the officer first, struck the officer. The officer returned fire at some point during that conversation.
How many total rounds were fired by both parties?
It was over 10 rounds that we found at the scene. 10 shell cases, more than 10 shell cases were found at the scene.
Do we know how fast the vehicle was traveling when the pursuit started taking place?
We don't know. Don't know.
Can you explain a little more in depth or broad why this person was described as troubled? Like, what might have brought up something like this or that descriptor?
I don't want to go too much into this person's background because a lot of this right now we're trying to confirm a lot of details concerning the person. But I can say that Albany has had very little contact with this person. But we do know that the person has had some contact with some other jurisdictions. I don't know the nature of those contacts necessarily, but I do know that some of those contacts were potential criminal-based contacts that jurisdiction had. But clearly the person has had some challenges in the past. I just don't have the exact nature of those.
Has he served time for any of the offenses?
Don't know. Yeah, don't know.
Is the person in Albany a resident?
Yes, the person is an Albany resident.
The,
I don't know. I don't know that the suspect he has an Albany address. I just don't have the address.
did the officer call for backup prior to approaching the vehicle?
I don't know. I don't know. But I'll say without having that detail that it's not uncommon in a situation like that for an officer to approach without backup. You know, it's a prototypical routine traffic violation. And our officers are trained to engage with traffic violators if they're a single unit without calling for backup. If there's some indicator that that it may be a heightened situation where they may need it, then they certainly will. But in this case, too, we got to remember, when the officer saw that vehicle parked on the side of the road, it's highly likely that the officer had no idea that that person was there. You know, it's a lot of times when our officers are dealing with situations like that and they see the vehicle later, most of the time that vehicle is unoccupied. They bailed from the vehicle and, you know, we're just investigating, impounding the vehicle or something like that. So it's likely that was the state of mind that the officer was in at that point.
Chief, I've spoken with several police officers, many of whom have served long, distinguished careers, who have told me they've never once had to fire their weapon during their line of service. How typical is a police-involved shooting? Is it gaining in prevalence? Do you have any data to back up anything?
Well, we have a lot of anecdotal evidence, you know, especially recently, what's happened in Syracuse and what's happened in some other places. And you're right, you know, a lot of officers go their entire career and never fire the weapon. In fact, I would say the vast majority of officers do that. I mean, I've been a law enforcement officer for 33 plus years, and I worked the road for several years, and I supervised a unit that was a tactical unit that was out doing high risk type of things. And during my time, I've never fired my weapon, but there are situations where it certainly justifies it. Now, we've had most recently 3 incidents, at least since I've been chief here, where officers have had to discharge their weapons. And in each one of those instances, we've got body-worn video evidence that shows that these officers were being attacked in deadly force situations, twice with a knife. In one of those knife situations, the officer was brutally stabbed, and we have one here where an officer was shot. And so, yes, it's rare, and you're absolutely right, but circumstances arise where it's happening, and what's very troubling to us in this profession is that anecdotally anyway, it just seems as if our officers are under siege more so than they have been in the recent past with some of these things. And but we're thankful for the support we get from the city. We're thankful for the support we get from the members of this community. I've received And other commanders and deputy chiefs in this department have received so many calls from other law enforcement officers, members of this community, expressing, their sympathy and well wishes and support for the police department. And so we have that. And I think it's important that our officers know that when they're out there performing this challenging job. Here, and then I'll come back to you, Steve. Yes.
Can you provide an age range of the suspect?
Yeah, suspect is somewhere between 26 and 29 years old. In the mid to late 20s is what we have. I don't have the exact date of birth, but yeah, Steve.
You said about 10 rounds were fired. Do you know how many times the suspect was struck?
No, I don't know. And right now, the autopsy is being conducted, so we'll have those autopsy results. If not later today, then sometime tomorrow. That'll show exactly how many times, and show exactly the cause of death as well. Yes, ma'am. And now come back to you. Yes.
During this morning's press conference, it was mentioned about red flag laws. Was this person flagged of a red flag?
Not that I'm aware of. Yes. Yes.
Mayor, this morning on another EL, you said that you had spoken with the officer and his family. Is there anything from that conversation that you could reiterate, you feel comfortable reiterating to us?
Well, I mean, certainly, for his family, this is their worst nightmare. This is not the call that anyone wants to receive about their loved one who is in law enforcement. With respect to the officer, remarkable. He was stoic about what had happened. Clearly, it was, as I said to him, this is not how you expected to end your day. But his attitude was, this is what I signed up to do. Really remarkable, amazing, and admirable.
Chief, in your opinion, the officer did follow protocol with this incident, correct?
A preliminary assessment of this is absolutely, but I say that to say also that it'll be thoroughly investigated. We've got a lot of layers of investigation with this. Obviously as chief, I'll see things, and it's in my preliminary assessment will be whatever it is. But again, the New York State Attorney General's office will be conducting a full investigation of this. Our Office of Professional Standards from the police department will, and again, we have a civilian review board that we've made contact with already, and we're providing them information so that if they choose to conduct an internal investigation themselves, or a concurrent investigation with our internal investigation, then they have that opportunity to do so as well. So a lot of eyes will be on this incident. Yes, sir.
I know you said that this suspect has had several run-ins with police in other areas. Do we know if he has any kind of official criminal history right now?
I don't know, sir. Yeah, don't know.
What was the name of the one-way where the chase was canceled?
Do you have the street, Megan?
State Street.
All right, thank you. Thank you.